Thank you.
Thank you, Bela. And I've got 5 minutes to address the questions that Philip raised, which deserve probably a bit more time. But okay, let's start with 5 minutes and then see in the discussion what we can do. Because, I mean, the issues being raised are, of course, very crucial, especially when we are talking about working time, inequalities, the democratic formulation. I mean, these are issues that we are having right now, and it's big themes. I think when we are discussing greening ourselves out of the economy, it's often being used too easily. It's people just say, okay, there is a green solution going out of it, and I, of course, as a green politician, like the terminology, but at the same time, I do realize how fundamental that assignment is, and I think it starts all by acknowledging how fundamental that change is, and then probably we can get into some of your points being raised, Philip. And so therefore, I think what is very crucial is that we start to realize that we are at the brink of a new industrial revolution, which is totally different from what we had 100 years ago, or in England 130 years ago. It is a completely change of our democratic structures, because 100 years ago, 120 years ago, the Industrial Revolution was a complete top-down design. That was how it was formulated, but see how the energy was being constructed. It was very centralized energy production and then being transported to the consumers. That was making the people, of course, dependent of the energy infrastructure, but that was also the design of it. There were politicians, and well, the democratic aspects were not as fully developed as they are now, more at least, but at least what they did was centralizing production facilities and get it to the consumers and make sure that they are not concerned anymore about all kinds of issues, so that the products will be delivered, the energy will be delivered. Food took a bit longer, but you see that the development of food production has been a completely centralization of food production over the course of the years as well. And when we were coming out of the Second World War, we were having problems with our food production, and the solution was, of course, even more centralization also of our food production at the European level, which is now being seen as a kind of a model for the rest of the world. And therefore you see, when we are discussing CAP reform here in the European Parliament, you see still a stream in the politics which are called conservatives, which is a very good name because they want to keep up the same model, and they say we are going to copy this model to the outside world and we are going to feed the world with that model. And that has been a kind of a paradigm which has been very dominant in how we have been constructing. We are now at the brink of a new industrial revolution which will also deliver us a fundamental different way of getting to our products. And energy is a very good example, because if you look at how energy was constructed, if we are moving away from that centralized production schemes, we are going indeed to the renewables, which sometimes is still a centralized way of dealing with that, but most often it is a decentralized democratization of energy supply, making the people in control of their energy demand and energy supply again. And that is a fundamental change in the society, which is, of course, also going to break some of these structures. That's why it's such a big fight, because the ones who are now delivering the energy, and they are willing to change maybe from coal-fired power plants to nuclear plants, but that's more or less the discussion you can have with them, but the fundamental infrastructure behind it stays the same. It's centralized, keeping your infrastructure, delivering it to your consumers. And that is, of course, going to change when we are discussing a green future. It is democratization of energy supply. And that is one of the things that might be difficult to get arranged, because there are indeed vested interests of people who want to stick as where they are. But I think in the end, they can't prevent that the energy that is out there is everywhere. And you cannot, as soon as the technological development goes ahead, it becomes a power of the consumers to use the energy, which is decentralized per theory. So that is, of course, also a very important one. Then on your financing bit, you know, where does the money come from? I also think there, what you see is that we are very much stuck in our old-fashioned way of dealing with it. First of all, looking at all the subsidies we are giving to the fossil industry. Really, that is a key number to remember. There is a lot of hidden subsidies giving to all kind of industry all over the place. And we are just, when we are discussing new industry starting, people are expecting that they should be paying for everything. A very simple example is offshore wind energy. All the European governments tell those industries you have to pay for your infrastructure. Whereas at the same time, see how much we all as consumers are paying for the infrastructure, for the coal-fired power plants. We even pay to dig out our rivers so that the heavy coal-loaded ships can reach all the different harbors in Europe. We pay for that. No one is asking those industries to pay for that infrastructure. And that is because of the, you know, the dogma in the way we are confronted with our energy supply is that all those industries are always delivered and being supported. 1 minute already, my gosh, already. And therefore there is a lot of money available. And the same goes, of course, and then you are discussing another point of democratization. Do you know how much Europe pays per year to import oil? Last year, Europe paid 315 billion euros in 1 year. So that's almost 1 billion euro per day, only paying to other regimes to import our oil. So when we are discussing where's the money, where are the investments, we really have to see on how are we constructing with our subsidies or our hidden subsidies, red diesel and all these kind of things, but also how much are we paying for these kind of imports? That is also a fundamental question we need to address. But, and that is really fundamental, the change, the way we are producing, is in the end also a fundamental change in our economic system. Because how it was designed historically, we were maximizing our inputs, delivering the products, leading it to waste. That's the linear economy we have based our model on. Like I said, it's centralized, but it's also linear. The future will be decentralized, but it will also be far more a circular economy. An economy where you have efficiency of the inputs and where you have the products being reused. But that's easily said, but this means great achievements we need in design already. If you see how we are now using our metals in all kind of our machines or cell phones or whatsoever, they are mainly designed to look nice. They are not designed at all to reuse all the metals that are in. And it's very difficult with the current designs to get them out again and to reuse them. So in that sense, when we are discussing education and innovation, it's also fundamental in design. But also if you're going to reuse your nutrients, very crucial for the democratization of food supply, which is far more local, then we also need to reuse our nutrients. That will be reusing the phosphorus we are now throwing in our sewer system every day. But that means also a total reconstruction of the way we are using our sewer system. So in that sense, really going from a linear economy to a circular economy will also have fundamental changes in the way we design things, the way we have constructed our urban infrastructure, the way we are going to construct the infrastructure in Europe, the way we are going to consume and produce energy. And so those are very fundamental things. Maybe just to conclude, and that's of course on the final end, the Chinese model has been mentioned a couple of times. I think what in the end we should be learning from this, from China, is only one particular thing, and that is that we need a very foresighted industrial policy model again. That was of course being ignored and being, we were going away from that, especially in the 80s and the 90s, because we said the markets can do the industrial development and politicians have to stay out of it. That's, of course, the model we really should be leaving now. We should be having a new vision on what kind of industrial model we want to pursue. If you do that, starting with that vision, then you can know where you can invest in. There is enough investment potential out there, but we have to look at it. It will have fundamental consequences on where we design it, how we construct it, how we produce it. But in the end, it starts from there, and that is probably the best thing we can learn from the Chinese, not their democratic model.